This is very bad news for the UFC because Sean O'Malley could quite possibly be injured and out of his upcoming fight with the champion Merab Dvalishvili. So let's get stuck into it because there was a photo that came out today which showed Sean O'Malley on crutches. Now, firstly, I will say this is not necessarily official or confirmed, and Sean O'Malley, being the troll that he is, maybe he's just playing mental warfare because him and Merab are always going online, always creating content and always creating skits. So is there a possibility that is what has happened? Yes. However, I am a little bit worried. And I think the UFC will be a little bit worried as well because the bantamweight division, whilst tremendously stacked and very skilled, there are not a long line of contenders putting their hands up to fight for the title. Now, there's a lot of people who would like to fight for the title, but there's not a lot of people in that division that the fans are really clambering to see. So let's break it down, because at the top, you've got Petr Yan is the likely backup to this fight. The problem is with that, we have seen that before. Now, is there a possibility that Petr Yan goes out there and beats Merab, makes the necessary adjustments, has a good performance, and remembers that he is the elite and one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world? Quite possibly. There's a very good chance that could happen. But we've already seen it. And the last time we saw it, it was tremendously dominant. So it's a tough sell. It's a tough fight to get people up for. At least with Sean O'Malley, there is a little bit of doubt because he had a vocal injury coming into the fight where he couldn't grapple. Okay, that's a seed of doubt. Maybe it's a little bit different. Okay, he did have him hurt in the 5th round and running around. There's another little seed. So even though it's not as concrete, there was some storyline there. With the Petr Yan rematch, I can't really see any, to be perfectly honest. And then off the back of that, you've not really got anyone coming off a win. Umar, of course, coming off a loss. Corey Sandhagen's not been able to have decent consistency for the last couple of fights. Davison Figueiredo picked up a loss just when he was about 1 fight away. So now you're in a really weird position if you're the UFC in the bantamweight division, because what do you do? What do you do? I've got a solution. I've got a solution that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, and I think is the solution which makes the most amount of sense. Pantoja. Alexandre Pantoja is the fight to make, in my opinion, and I don't even care if he has a fight booked at 125 pounds. That's the move to make. I think it was a long time ago, and I'm not really too sure why they didn't. There's been a lot of conversation around double champions the last couple of years, but the only time there hasn't been a conversation, really, is probably the only time it actually made sense in the last flipping decade. And that is Pantoja, because you go through his division, he's either too far removed for it to make perfect sense, or he's beaten the contenders, or he's beaten the contenders multiple amounts of times, spanning back to the Ultimate Fighter household. So there was a fantastic conversation to be had that Pantoja would go up and face the bantamweight champion. I thought the timing for it was absolutely perfect, and just if, and it is a big if, Sean O'Malley comes out, it turns out that he's injured, and they need a replacement for that Merab fight, I think Pantoja's the go-to call. I really do. And I think it opens up the flyweight division as well with that, which I think is not a bad thing either. Because, yes, I think he's coming towards the back end of his career. Let's try and squeeze that. Let's try and maximise that. Pantoja's not going to be a bigger star than he is currently. And also, he's great on the mic. He's improving on the mic. And let's not ignore the fact he's a very exciting fighter. And you look at the style of Merab Dvalishvili, just to look at that matchup in a little bit more depth and transparency, that's a really interesting fight. Because when you look at Pantoja's game, he wants to essentially get contact, create some grips, and start looking to either land damage on the ground or choke you unconscious. But he is more than happy to walk towards you with his chin in the air, throwing wild, dangerous hooks until that moment happens. And you look at someone like Merab Dvalishvili and the struggles that people have had with him, it's going to be interesting to see what that would look like against a guy who is actually very happy to play jiu-jitsu. He's very happy to create scrambles and transitions like Pantoja, because Merab doesn't pin people down for too long. He doesn't really damage. So it is a lot of takedowns, or at least entries, and then stand-ups. So Pantoja is fantastic in those transition phases, whether it be just creating them himself or be reacting to them. So if we look at style matchups from Merab, I actually think it's a difficult fight as well, and an entertaining fight. And if nothing else, it will bring the fight out of Merab, because Pantoja is the type of guy, like I mentioned, to walk forward, invite the danger, and then counteract that on the fly. And that's what you have to respect about the guy, because despite the fact he's getting towards the best end of 40 in the flyweight division, he still throws caution to the wind and hunts the finish. And it is just a shame that that cliche flyweights get overlooked narrative is in play, because he is ridiculously exciting. He does have a very fun style, and he's absolutely shamed on the pound for pound rankings. Every week they are updated, and he's sitting at number 10, number 9, number 8. It's ridiculous. Now, I know those rankings are for the most part irrelevant, and it's just people like me sitting at home and just crunching a few numbers and creating a list. Sure. And they're basically designed for people like me to get annoyed at them. Sure. But in which world can we possibly put Pantoja at number 9 in the pound for pound rankings? It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense when there's not even 9 weight classes and he's a multiple time defending champion. I can't even understand the logic an iota, let alone the top 3, the top 4. That's not even what I'm talking about. Argue amongst yourselves of who you believe that is. To not even have him in the amount of weight classes that there is just silly. We're in a world where Ankalaev moves into the top 5. Sure, hasn't lost in a few years, coming off some good wins. Completely understand it. Or the fellow who's had the belt, he's got 900 rubies in it, and he's beaten the best contenders multiple times. If you've got multiple wins over Brandon Moreno at 125 pounds, you're the real deal. You are the real deal. And you look at flyweight, we're in a conversation where people are starting to say, well, how many more does he need to, when we're talking about him and sort of DJ at flyweight? Now, I'm not saying those conversations are necessarily close or near, or that I think we're in a position where we're ever going to talk about him surpassing what Demetrius Johnson did. But they're starting to creep into at least the same stratosphere of conversation. And that speaks to what he's done in that division. So I think that's the move to make next. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, keep it casual.